Yeah, hello, this is Dave from cheapbooks.com. The video game is World of Tanks. This is the 9.8 version. 9.9 is going to come out very soon. And this is about your crew and your crew skills. I have lots of videos about crew skills. There's two things that are misinformation that I knew incorrectly in some of the videos that I'm going to correct today. And I'm going to give you some updated information after a lot of heavy gameplay as to what I think each crew member should have as a skill. Now, first of all, I was wrong about the maximum number of skills that a person can have. It's actually 25. So an individual can have 25 skills in total. And I had heard it was 6 or 7. The most I've heard a person having is 7, but 25 is actually the limit. Second of all, I thought that if you had used vents, where are the vents? Okay, the vents right here, improve ventilation, and things like Brothers in Arms, and if you get this up to 100%, I thought that it allows the crew to train their skills, but it's absolutely not true. Let's see if I could find a tank that's a good example. Okay, here's an example. This guy here says 102%, but his training level is actually 87%. I thought, well, if I give him the commander's bonus and the equipment and consumables, and he gets up to his 100, I thought that his skill would start improving, but it does not. His training level will continue to improve. Okay, so now the question is, what skills should a person have? And I'm going to start by showing you this tank. Ignore what I actually have because this is irrelevant. I have a playing style that I am often on the front lines. And being on the front lines, you need camouflage. Absolutely. There's other people who don't play on the front lines. A Tog might be a good example. The Tog is always the last one to get the battle. You know what? He uses the same crew, so it's irrelevant. But if you're the type of person that is never on the front lines and you're always spotted by the enemy, then camouflage doesn't help you. But I'm the type of person where I go into enemy territory and I try to flank them and sneak up behind them, so I need camouflage. There's also situations where you're playing and there's a tank in the distance and you can see him and he can't see you. That's where camouflage comes into play. I recommend camouflage for every tank, and there are people who don't like it, but they have a different playing style. So camouflage I still endorse for every tank. Here's some of the changes that I've made. In terms of consumables, I use the small repair kit, the large repair kit, and I use the large first aid kit unless I have a problem with the tank catching on fire. I had a tank, in fact I think it was this one, that caught on fire 3 games in a row. So I stopped using the first aid kit and I switched to the fire extinguisher. So if you don't have an automatic fire extinguisher, you're probably going to want to have the firefighting skills on some of your crew. Before I had repairs on my crew. Now what I do is I put firefighting because I have 2 repair kits and it's rare that I need a 3rd repair. So now firefighting is in fact my priority. And in fact what you might want to do is use some firefighting and some repairs. But it's one of the things you want to consider. Now the first aid kit can be replaced with the commander who has Jack of all trades. Jack of all trades allows the commander to do the qualifications when a crew member is knocked out, which is essentially the same thing as using a repair kit. Obviously there's no cost to Jack of all trades, and there's a cost when you use the large first aid kit. So if you want to save on your large first aid kit, you could get Jack of all trades. And I don't think I have any commander yet who has Jack of all trades because usually it's going to be my 5th skill or something like that. But that's one of the things you want to keep aware of. If you're worried about your crew injuries, you could replace it with Jack of all trades or you could get the first aid kit. Now, my general philosophy for picking crew skills is you want to pick something that you're always using. The things that rarely get used have a lower priority. For example, firefighting. Maybe 1 out of 50 games your tank catches on fire, so firefighting is a low priority. The one with the jack of all trades, let's say 1 out of 10 games you get an injured crew member, so that's a low priority. However, camouflage is on all the time. You're always worrying about being spotted or being hidden, so you're always using that. I recommend using it all the time. Sixth Sense I always recommend as being your first perk. Recon is another one of those skills that you're always using. It's not actually always being used. If there's no tank in front of you, technically you're not using it because you're seeing nothing. Or if you've got allies in front of you, you're not using it either. So Recon is, if you're a frontline player like me, you want to use Recon. If you're always behind your allies and you rely on your allies to spot, you might not want Recon. For example, an SPG might not use Recon. Now you have this one called Mentor. Mentor is one that anytime you do an action that earns experience, Mentor is being used. So Mentor gives you a 10%, up to 10% boost in value. What Mentor does is it increases your experience for the rest of your crew up to 10%. So if you get, let's say, 500 experience after a battle, these guys are all going to get 550 if Mentor is at 100%. So it's one of those skills that's always on. Every game that you gain experience, you're going to get a benefit by having Mentor. That's why I recommend Mentor. You get value and use out of it. There's another one here you'll see for the gunner. It's called Deadeye. What Deadeye does is it increases the damage you do when you fire a shot. And in a typical game, especially in the higher tier, you're going to fire around, you're going to get like 10 hits per game. So that's why you want Deadeye. You're going to increase the amount of damage. It's one of those things that always works when you're firing your gun. So I recommend it. There's another one that's called Designated Target, which I also recommend, but not as much as Deadeye. And you don't use it as often. Designated Target comes only into play when you're sniping at someone who might disappear. If someone is going to be spotted because you've got a lot of allies that are in the thick of battle, then it won't come into play. Okay, so let's look at these skills. Today, by the way, is July 8th, 2015. So I pick, first of all, you're going to want to pick something like Mentor, because you can't use Sixth Sense until it gets to 100%. And then you pay, using the reset option, to switch this to Sixth Sense, and then you would choose something like Mentor, and then you would use something like Camouflage, and then you would use something like Recon, and then you would use something like Jack of all trades, and then you would use Firefighting and Repairs. And Brothers in Arms is something that I would use later. Like once your crew gets 3 or 4 skills, use the reset option to give them all Brothers in Arms. That's when I would use it. Eagle Eye would never use. This would be the absolute last skill that I would ever pick. You'll notice that my commander has 3 skills while the rest has 2. You'll find that I do this on a lot of my tanks. I'm going to show you with my Russian tanks. You can see my commander has 4 skills while the rest have 3 or even 1. And that's because once I get a tank with a lot of skills, I make them the commander. Okay, so what tank were we on? We were on this one over here. We're going to talk about the gunner. I still recommend getting Deadeye. If you've got a 3rd skill, I would say make Designated Target next, and then Camouflage, and then work on Firefighting, Repairs, and Brothers in Arms would be great, but like I said, everybody has to have it. And these others are great too, but get them when you're ready. Snapshot, how often do you fire while your turret is rotating? If you have a light tank, it might be kind of important. But if you don't, then it might be a complete waste. Armor improves accuracy of a damaged gun. it might be 1 out of 50 games you get a damage gun. So this is going to be one of the ones you're going to save for later. Now, the driver, things like this right here is called off-road driving. When you're on the road, that's a map like Himmelsdorf where it's paved. Off-road means the grass and the sand and the dirt. You're doing this all the time. Whenever you drive and you're not on a paved surface, you're using off-road driving. So that's why I picked it. It gives a lot of benefit. You get more use out of it. Clutch braking is when you're spinning your tank. I spin my tank when I'm in a close combat battle, or I suppose if you're a tank destroyer, you'd probably want clutch braking. But in general, I would say this is a lower priority. Controlled impact is for ramming. If you do a lot of ramming, or an SPG might get rammed a lot, or some tank destroyers and light tanks get rammed a lot, so you might want controlled impact for a light tank. And smooth ride, accuracy when firing on the move. This is something that a fast tank would do. Fast tanks fire on the move, so if you have a fast tank, I would use it. If not, then don't. And of course, preventative maintenance could be a replacement for all these fire extinguishers. Instead of getting firefighter for all of your crew, you could get the preventative maintenance instead. Have one person, who is your driver, reduce your chance of engine fire, or you could get the firefighting skill for everybody. Or you could have the automatic fire extinguisher. So you've got 3 ways to fight a fire: preventative maintenance, the firefighting, or automatic fire extinguisher. Now we'll go to radio operator. I would choose camouflage. Situational awareness you want if you do a lot of recon, light tanks, fast tanks. Anytime when you want to sneak up on the enemy, you want this type of a thing. With light tanks, if you do spotting, you want things that extend your signal range, and you want relaying if you're the type of tank that sits around and doesn't really go anywhere. And you want relaying is very important if you're an SPG. SPG needs good radios. Funny thing is, some of my SPGs don't have a radio operator, but for an SPG, you want the extended signal range. You want the relaying. Situational awareness I wouldn't put for an SPG unless you want a little bit of advanced notice when you're under attack. I would say repairs and firefighting, same rule as any other crew member. You use firefighting if you don't want to pay for the automatic fire extinguisher, and use repairs if you don't want to pay for the repair kits. Repairs are probably going to be common if you have a tank that gets tracked a lot. Like a light tank, people will constantly track you. If you're a tank destroyer, you'll get tracked a lot. If you're a brawler, maybe you get tracked a lot. It doesn't really happen to me enough that I would do it. However, when I played Domination, I got rid of camouflage for all of my crew, and I replaced it with repairs, because in Domination, you're constantly needing repairs. And you might get set on fire more often in the Domination mode, so you might want firefighting for Domination. A Call for Vengeance is a nice little thing that might be cool if you're a scout, but I would say it's going to be one of the last things you do, and it's only going to be if you're a scout. So now we got the loader. The loader, I would absolutely use camouflage. I do use Adrenaline Rush. Adrenaline Rush is one of those features, again, it's not always on. It's always on when you have less than 10% of your hit points left. And if you're firing 10 shots, this means that your last shot is going to be quicker, or your last couple shots. So that's when it comes into effect. At the end of the game, when you're low on hit points, you might only get 1 shot that loads faster. You might get 2 shots that load faster. So keep that in mind if you pick Adrenaline Rush. Safe stowage, if you're playing in Clan Wars and you're playing with people that know how to ammo rack you, you're playing against good players, you probably want safe stowage. This is one of the things I'm going to get. I'll explain. Definitely I'm going to use camouflage, but because I have the 2 repair kits, and I don't use them both very often, and you can get firefighting on a lot of different crew members, I would say camouflage and then maybe get safe stowage to protect your tank, especially if you're a heavy brawler and you get ammo racked often. If you see it happening, I would get it. Intuition, I would say, is a waste of time. Unless you really know how to use it, don't bother with it. Obviously, when you get to 5 and 6 skills, you get everything. It's a no-brainer. Okay, so that's the loader. Did I miss one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's everybody. So the changes that I've made in my design is that I get Mentor first. Because even though he has a third, I get Mentor first because it's always working. You get a 10% boost to your experience every game for your other crew. I've added firefighting, which I did not recommend before, and the reason why is because I've been switching all of my tanks to have the first aid kit, because I'm more likely to have an injured crew member than to have a fire. So I removed the automatic fire extinguishers, but I'm using the firefighting as a backup in case I do get a fire. It should help a little bit. The other change that I'm making is, you see this has off-road driving for the driver. I used to have clutch braking and perhaps some of the others, but for most tanks I'm going to use off-road driving instead, because usually you drive more in the game than you spin the tank. The exceptions are going to be tank destroyers. SPGs might be better off with clutch braking because SPGs are constantly spinning. You're constantly turning your tank, and it will benefit from that. And I've heard that Snapshot also benefits an SPG. Okay, if you have the option to increase, I usually use it only on commanders. I have a tank that's a Japanese tank, or Chinese. I don't have any Chinese premium tanks. So everybody has the same skill. I use it here to increase his skill so that he can get all those great, wonderful skills that the commander can get. I use it on this Chinese tank, and I use it on a Japanese tank, which is this guy right here. You'll notice everybody else has 91%. I use it here. I use the increase option. This used to be at 91%, and now it's up to 77%. You might not have this increase option because they do take it away. I'm going to show you my Russian crew. You can see here I've got this guy, 4th skill, 54%. I also use it on the commander here. I do not use it on any other tanks. On any other crew. I allow them to level up by playing the game. If somebody gets to be really good, let's see if I can find one. Over here, you can see that we've got 3 skills on these guys. He's going to go up to his 4th skill. But over here, look at that. This guy only has 2 skills. So what I could do is I could take this loader and I could use the change option and select the tank destroyer, the SU-152, and I could make him the commander and pay the 500 gold. Actually, I meant to do it for the S-51 SPG. I could take I could give this guy a 3-skilled commander and take the commander over here and make him the loader over here where he came from. That's how I got this extra skill up here. I had a tank where the whole crew had 4 skills, and once I did that, I took 3 of the people and I moved them to different tanks. One of them is on my IS-8, one is on my IS-4, one is on my T-44, and I suppose the other one did not exist because I don't see another one. So that's the way I did it. Now the last tip, and this is one of my favorite ones. I'm going to look at my tank destroyers here. These are my German tank destroyers. They all share the same crew. So this Jagdtiger, you see how it says 73%? Just like 2 weeks ago, they were at 44%. And I haven't played that many games. But the reason why is because they had a weekend with a 5 times bonus. And then I go over here and I take the same crew. I use the option to return the crew. It comes from my Jagdtiger. And it puts, actually, I'm training up these lower guys. But I share the crew with all these tanks. Here's another example where I'm training up the lower guys. Basically, this crew, I use them on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different tanks. So when I play, they get the 2 times bonus 5 times a day. Or if it's a 5 times bonus or a 3 times bonus, they're getting it. I would play on the Jagdpanzer, and then I would move this crew to the Stug 4. I would move them to the Dickermax, move them to the E25, move them to the Jagdtiger. They're advancing very, very rapidly. Like I said, it was only like 2 weeks ago that they were at 44%, and now they're at 73%. This is going to take one game for me to get them to go up to 74%. And I'm sure that today I could probably get them up to 78% just from 5 games. It'll be a month when they're up to their 4th crew member. So the way you do that is by getting all those premium tanks. But you're going to say, well, you know, those premium tanks were kind of expensive. Well, there's another way to do it. I'm going to show you my light tanks. These tanks all share the same crew. My M41 Bulldog crew works in my Locust. It's the same crew. And it works in my T2 light tank, and it works in my T1E6. Now I'm going to show you my service record for my vehicles. We're going to do light tanks, and we're going to go find these tanks. They're going to be American. Okay, so... oh, no, those are tank destroyers. M41 Bulldog. Look at my average experience. 447. That's actually pretty low. I'm not happy with that. As you can see, my T71 is 562. It's much higher. So look at the Locust. 449. My Locust experience is a Tier 3 tank, and it's higher than the M41 Bulldog, which is a Tier 7 tank. M2 Light, okay, that's kind of low. It's 195. No, that's not the tank. The T2 Light. This is from when I played years ago when I was a beginner. That's why my scores are low. So the T2 Light, 364 is pretty good. So I'm getting pretty good experience with that. And the other tank is the T1E6. I've only played 13 games. Look at my win rate. It's very low, only 23%. I'm not playing it properly. Had some bad games. So my scores are low. But the Locust is a perfect example where the Locust and the Bulldog, I'm getting the same experience. And look at my Locust win rate, 75%. So what happens is my Locust gets the same experience as my Walker Bulldog, plus it gets the bonus for crew training. And this tank, I think it only cost like 50 cents or something like that. Maybe it was even, no, maybe it was $1. These tanks are like $1 each, and I might have even gotten them for free. So keep these tanks. I wish I had the T7 car. I sold mine. I've asked for it back. And the Tetrarch is another example. And it's not just with the Americans. You can get it with other tanks too. I bought the Black Prince, the Matilda Black Prince. It shares the crew with my Centurion. My FV201 and my Black Prince and my Tog and my Excelsior all use the same crew. I just got 2 of those tanks a few days ago, so the crew hasn't really reflected it yet. But they're quickly going to be up to a 4th skill. So we could look at Germany Other than my tank destroyers, you can see I've got this T-15, which shares a crew with my VK-2801. I purchased the, this is like the Somua S-35, the T-25, the Panther, and the Indian Panzer can all share crews. So these cheap tanks, like I said, they might only cost $1 or $2, will help me improve the skills for my crew. The low I bought like the first 2 weeks I played the game. We've already talked about tank destroyers. With France, I've got the FCM-50T. There's only a few French premium tanks. That's the only one I own right now. With the Soviet Union, I've got the same thing. I've got these two really cheap tanks, the Valentine and the T-127, that maybe they're only $1 or $2 to train the crew. And the Matilda 4, I think this was more like a $10 tank. I bought the Churchill 3. I used the IS-6. So now I've got the Churchill 3, the IS-6, the IS-8, and the IS-4. They all use the same crew. And then for tank destroyers, there's the Su-100Y, the Su-152, and then there's another one, the Su-122-44, which is right here. I haven't purchased it yet. But by buying those, you can drastically increase your crew training. For China, I don't have any yet, and for Japan, I decided to buy the Chinukai, again, because it was a cheap tank. It was probably like $5 to $10. I don't remember the price. I may have gotten some of them on sale. So that's the techniques I use for some of the crew training. The other things you can do, you've got personal reserves. What I do is, you can't have the same one twice. Like if it's additional crew experience per battle, you can only use one at a time. But what I do is I wait until the weekend when they do the 5 times bonus, and I'm going to play my best. I only activate them then. So I'm going to get the 5 times bonus. I'm going to play the premium tanks. I'm going to have all of these bonuses activated. Plus you want to pick a mission. For example, they have the Prokhorovka mission, which has double the crew experience all day today. So I try to stack everything as much as I can to maximize all of my bonuses, and that's how I do it. So in terms of your crew skills, your regular tanks might be a little bit different between your light, your heavy, your medium. They're definitely going to be different for tank destroyers and definitely going to be different for SPGs. Excuse me. If you have any questions or comments, please post below.